Welcome back to the Ivory Tower Collections. Today's video is going to be kind of cool and short, hopefully. What we're going to do is I'm going to go through the process of essentially replacing most of the insides of this original Atari 2600 CX40 controller and basically try to bring it back up in like new working condition again, almost like it's just out of the box. So I'm going to do that by using all parts from AtariRepairParts.com. Let's check it out. What tools will you need for today's video? Well, for starters, you're going to need an original CX40 controller that's, probably in good condition, but probably a little tired and, could use a little bit of refurbishment and use some new parts. Now, I will state that this particular controller is essentially basically working, but, it would be nice if it just worked a little bit better, and that's what we're going to do in today's video. You're also going to just need a number 2 Phillips screwdriver like this one here. You don't have to have anything fancy, but this is really the only tool you're going to need. As far as the replacement parts are concerned, what I'm going to be using today is going to be using a replacement PCB that just drops right in where the original used to go. And it comes with a new wire harness for the controller cable as well. Now, as it turns out, the original boot on the top of this controller looks a little chewed up. Maybe somebody's puppy or something at some point in time got a hold of it. Who knows? I'm also going to be replacing that today as well. So I also have a brand new replacement boot that Atari Repair Parts also sells. And then last but not least, and not completely required, is this little guy right here. This is a tiny little spring. This is a replacement spring for the fire button. So that's all the parts we're going to need. So what is one reason why you might want to go this route to repair the controller instead of just maybe buying a replacement or possibly even repairing it internally? Because that is an option, of course. You can get replacement little dome switches and you could just get the boot separately. Well, one advantage to this is that this is solderless. That's right, I do not need my soldering iron to do anything that I'm about to do here. It's also very quick and very easy. And so when it comes down to it, from a cost versus time perspective, this is really almost a preferred way to go, even if you're really proficient with repairing things. Now, of course, there's a certain amount of satisfaction from fixing your own stuff, and I get that. But for most people, if they have an old CX40 controller and they want to fix it up, this is going to be the way to go. What is the cost breakdown for everything? A replacement 2600 boot, like you see here, is currently $6 each from AtariRepairParts.com. And then you can actually get the replacement cable and the PCB assembly for $10 on its own. Now, that might also seem expensive, but when you compare it to the cost of a replacement CX40 controller, or just like I said, the time to work on this yourself, this really is an awesome option because it's got all of their new dome switches installed, which have the gold-plated contacts on it, on this new PCB. Additionally, the new cable harness is very high quality and is just a plug-in connection type. It just will plug in right into the board right up here at the top, making it very simple. And then the little spring here, these little guys are $1 a piece, or you can get them in a pack of 5 for about $3 at the time of me making this video. So let's get to it. Let's take this thing down and let's put some new parts into it. Taking apart the CX40 controller is actually quite easy. Again, all you need is just a number 2 Phillips head screwdriver. On the bottom of the controller, there's going to be 4 spots that you'll have to mark out for screws. But I'm going to start by going ahead and removing the 4 Phillips head screwdrivers from this controller. These are all the same length, so you do not have to worry about mixing them up. And that's it. I've got all 4 of these screws undone. I'm just going to set these off up here for a bit. And now when it comes to the controller itself, when you go to take this apart, you'll need to be kind of careful because you don't want to lose the spring underneath the fire button. So what I typically do is I'll actually turn the controller upside down and hold it in my hand kind of like this. And then I will carefully wedge it up like that. And if you do it correctly, you'll have the PCB, the original PCB, still in place with the bottom housing like that. And then I can carefully, now because this one's never been taken off before, it's sticking in there a little bit. There we go. I can take that off, and there we are. There's the original controller PCB. Here is the original spring. Actually, it does look like it's in pretty good shape. And it's got kind of a cone appearance to it. There's some plastic that came out of the controller housing there. So I'm probably still going to install a new spring just in case. Here's the original fire button. It's still in good condition, although I will be cleaning this up before I reassemble. And then the actual joystick part itself has this white plastic shaft that was made back in the day and molded to fit inside of the boot section. And this has the little nubs on it that push down onto the dome switches. But this is the only part that's going to be basically reused in addition to the rest of the case housing for this repair. So I'm just going to set this off to the side. And then as far as the main board is concerned, you'll notice that the original wiring has little clip leads that just kind of slide in on top of these traces. Now I'm going to be replacing this entire wire harness assembly as part of this setup because it's required for the new board. So to remove it, I'm going to have to wiggle these off of here. Now, given their age, you might find that they might actually just break. And that's not too unusual either. And what I'm doing to kind of help loosen them up is I'm first wiggling it up and down. That breaks it loose off of the original PCB contact, and then I start to wiggle a little bit while also pulling back. And I'm just going to do that for all of these to get them loose. And then as far as the rest of the cable is concerned, since I've got it all disconnected, all I have to do here is just to kind of wiggle it up a little bit, like I've done here, and then it's going to fit through an opening that's in the bottom. Now the wires might want to snag a little bit, so I'm just going to kind of finagle them through here a little bit. There we go. And we have that all freed up and out. I now want to focus my attention on the top portion of the controller and specifically on the boot replacement. Now there are two ways that you can kind of go about replacing this boot. I'm going to show you what's probably supposed to be the correct but I think most difficult way, and I'm going to show you the easier way. So I'm just going to describe what I think is the proper process, but I think also the most difficult, and that is that the boot is held in place with an inner retention ring that snaps into place around it at the base. This ring specifically has some catches on the bottom side of the shell, and the idea, if I'm not mistaken, is to use some sort of like a semi-blunt tool and to essentially kind of push up against the insides of these catches to release the ring and get it released. Once you've done that, the boot would just come right out. However, because of the condition and age of these controllers, again, we're talking 40 plus years, the plastic on these is really quite brittle. So here's what I do that I think is easier. Again, we already have everything removed from the controller, which makes this really easy. All you need to do is take the controller boot and starting at like one side or wherever you want to, just kind of take your nail or your hand and your finger and just kind of push up against the rubber boot in such a way that you start to separate it from the base of the ring. And once you get one edge started, it'll just pretty much just pop right on out. And that's it. That's the easiest way to get the boot right out, is just to pull it loose from the ring. Now that just calls into question about installing the new one. Well, this is a little trickier, but it's the same process. We're just going to go in reverse. So similar to before, I'm just going to start on one side. I'm going to first kind of get the boot situated the way I need to, and then I'm just going to kind of start working the edges in to fit underneath it. And then what I will sometimes find is helpful is on this one here, whichever side has the longer tab on it for that retention ring, because there's going to be one side that's going to be longer than the other, it helps to push up on that side as kind of like the last bit. And there we go. See, it was that easy. I just had to just pop it right back in underneath the ring. So now let's get the rest of it put together. So for this, I'm going to need the original insert I'm going to get my new PCB board, and I'm going to get my new replacement wire. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and start with the bottom shell here. And what we need to do is we need to feed this portion of the new cable harness through the bottom shell. And we're going to do that by going through the little tiny opening that's just right here. So the easiest way to do this is to just kind of take the new cable harness plug and just kind of turn it at an angle, kind of like that, so that you can then insert it through kind of diagonally, and just, you know, work it through kind of slowly, just like that. There we go. And then I'm going to take the rest of the cabling, feed it back through. And just like it was before, there's actually a spot on one side of the cable, but right along this portion here of the cable, there is going to be a section that's going to be a little more round because it's going to have a flat side. And what you want is you want that flat side to be facing up inside the housing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to line it up through the opening. And then right when I get to the spot where that is, there we go. So what we're doing is we're kind of locking this grommet into place. And again, the rounded edge is the part you want down with the flat side facing up. And then from here, we got a whole lot of the cable wire, or the harness wire, like this. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of twisting it around a little bit, just to kind of take up some slack. Now I'm going to get the new PCB right here and just plug it right in. It is keyed, so you want to make sure that the little notches on top mesh up with the notches up here. And it'll just plug in like that. And then when it's all said and done, the whole thing will just sit in place where the original used to go. So the easiest way now to get the rest of it put back together is now we're going to take the top housing. I'm now going to get the plastic white insert portion here. I'm going to insert that. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the fire button. I'm going to go ahead and set that where it needs to go. I'm now going to get my new spring that I have for it, which is right here, this tiny little guy, and I'm going to set it down like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up so that when I go to put this replacement board in, I'm going to go ahead and have it sitting where it needs to go, just like that. There's little pegs on the top portion housing. There's two little pegs here that will help to align the board in place. And this way the fire button's already where it needs to go, and it'll be a little easier to put it all back together. So now with it sitting like this, I'm going to take the whole thing and I'm just going to kind of turn it around a little bit. Again, I'm trying to get some of the extra play off that cable with the orientation on this being that the controller cable comes out the same direction as the fire button. There we go. Just kind of clip it all together, hold it in place. Oh yeah, you can hear it clicking on that fire button really well. Also, real good clicky action on the controller. I'm going to go ahead and put the screws back in. One thing to take note of when you're actually putting the two housings back together and before you really screw it down tight is to make sure that the wiring harness cabling isn't getting pinched up anywhere inside. That's another reason why I kind of curl it up and twist it the way I do, is to make sure that it kind of forms a little loop around the center portion of the controller. That way I can minimize and prevent the harness from getting pinched anywhere inside. Okay. Controller's back together. It's cleaned up. The fire button's got some good action on it. So now what we need to do is to plug this thing into a 2600 and give it a test. I'm now here at the test bench with a 2600 Junior connected, and I've got Paul Slocum's test cartridge, which is perfect for testing this newly rebuilt controller with these new parts from Atari Repair Parts. So let's check it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get it plugged into the back here. And again, this is a new cable. And I have this connected up through HDMI using Lumicode. So here we go. There's not going to be any audio on this, but that's okay. I don't care in this particular case. We just need to verify that the controllers are working. And right here, this is the test cartridge screen, which shows me all of the different functionality switches, and also allows me to check the controller ports here with the left and right player controller. So I've got that controller right here in hand, so let's check it out. Oh yeah. Up, down, left, right. Fire button's working really well. This is amazing. It's basically like a brand new controller. It really feels great. And it's cleaned up and looking really good too. So thank you again for hanging out with me here at the Ivory Tower Collections. Hopefully this video was helpful to you and you can see the advantage in these repair kits from Atari Repair Parts. Again, if you don't care about needing, or if you don't need a replacement spring, or if you don't need a replacement boot for your controller, and you just have an issue with maybe some weak response, or with it not working properly in some of the directions due to a worn out dome switches, really for the $10 for the replacement PCB and cable, that's really a steal, and it just saves so much time and only takes a few minutes. So yeah, hopefully this is helpful to you, and I'll catch you guys next time. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm going to play some Hero.